welcome to P.B.M. Vending. Did you like the name? I mean, really? T-Rex Speaks. I'm T-Rex, by the way. And I was going to call it The Dinosaur Speaks, but honestly, I couldn't spell dinosaur. So we're going to call it T-Rex Speaks. Now, and the reason that I'm classifying myself as a dinosaur is because we're going to talk about credit. And the way that credit has changed since I was young. And I tried to figure out why, and I think I know. My parents went through the Depression. And I remember watching old movies about the evil banker, you know, and he would roll his mustache and he would take the family farm because they couldn't afford it during the Depression. That's how people saw bankers. That's how my mom and dad saw credit. So when I met my wife, my first wife, we went out house shopping. And we found a little house and we put in an offer and we got turned down. And I was like, why did we get turned down? And they said, because you don't have any credit. I said, but that's a good thing. I pay cash for everything and have for years. And she looked at me like I had three eyes and she said, no, you need to have some credit so the bankers know that you can handle it. And I said, so let me get this right. I need to borrow money and pay over time to prove that I can borrow money and pay over time. And she said, yes. I said, that's the dumbest logic I've ever heard. But I learned a lesson. Now, the purpose of credit back in the day, it was looked at kind of like a necessary evil. If you had too much credit, you were a big risk. If you didn't have any credit, you were a big risk. So you had to find that sweet spot. And usually it involved the following. Everybody had to have a car, so you needed a car loan, but you couldn't get a car loan until you had credit. So most people started, and this is because I asked a lot of people back then, how do you get started with credit? And they said, well, the first thing you need to do is go and get a store credit card. So we went out and bought furniture, and we paid it over time, and they reported it. And then they said, well, the next thing you need to do is to get a credit card. So we went and got a credit card from Sears, I think. And we bought some kitchen appliances, I believe. Paid that over time. And then you needed a house. And we went and bought a house. And the whole logic always escaped me. I never understood that. If somebody was going, in my mind, if somebody was going to be bad with credit, wouldn't they go out and rush out and get all the credit they could and run up the cards and leave you hanging with the bag? So, now fast forward a while, I don't know, 20 years or so. I'm in a hot mess and I had to file bankruptcy. Well, the representative from Sears shows up at the bankruptcy and wants me to reaffirm my loan. And I was like, sure. I said, the only thing that I want from you is a guarantee that I get to keep my credit card when this is all said and done. If I get that, then I'll reaffirm the loan. And he said, no problem. I said, okay. So I signed his paper and off he went. We filed bankruptcy, and a month later they canceled my credit card. I never forgot that. I never went back to Sears, and the fact that they're out of business now, I got to tell you, I laughed every day I read about their suffering. From 20 years ago when they started going down, to when they bought a failing Kmart, to when they shut all their stores, to when they filed bankruptcy, I laughed all the time because they deserved it. All this is associated with credit. Now I want to explain to you how people looked at credit back then. Less is better, but some is best. Like I said, the ideal person for credit back in the day was you needed 2 credit cards, one for emergency, one for vacation, and a store credit card, then of course a home and a car. Now as a general rule, credit cards were seen as bad, okay? So when you got your credit card, you kept your credit card and you kept the payments. And here, they did not give big credit limits back then. I mean, back in the day, my salary was considered pretty good, and I had good history. But they gave, and this is one of the tricks that the credit card companies used, and I learned this very quickly. They gave you a low credit limit, say $1,000, and the second you went over $1,000, they hit you with an over the limit fee. And I now know, because I would never go over the limit, but I now know, I never thought about it back then, and remember, this is before computer and technology was available for the general public. But the time between when I went over the limit and the time I got my statement, who knows how much was charged? And every time you charged over the limit, they zinged you. It was a big scam. So credit cards were seen as bad or a necessary evil. They charged usury rates, they gave you low limits, they found sleazy ways to charge you. It was just, okay. Now, when we talk about ratings on credit cards back then, today there are 5 different things that they look at. Back then there was just a rating. Now, I used to be an assistant credit manager at a plumbing, heating and air conditioning place here in town. I was assistant credit manager. I was responsible for giving out credit limits up to $50,000. Okay, so I know all about the way credit reports used to be. When I would call in to get a credit bureau, I would be given the name of the creditor, the date it was opened, the date of last activity, the high, the payments, and then that would give me a rating between 1 and 5. 1 would be excellent. Now, how did you get an excellent rating? Did you make your payments on time, month in and month out? Now think about that. It didn't matter the utilization. It didn't matter your credit limit. It didn't matter anything except did you make your payments on time. If you made your payments on time every month, that was a good thing. And it didn't matter. I mean, if you had a Visa credit card and your credit limit was $1,000 and you charged right up to the $1,000 and you made the minimum payment every month, you got a 1 on your credit report. If you missed a month, and by the way, they only reported once a year back then. And if you were late 1 day on a payment, 1 month, you got a 2 because you were considered 30 days past due. They did everything in 30-day increments. So if you were 1 day late, you got a 2. And it would say 1 times 30 days late. And that would be the note, so that I would know, as a credit manager, I would know that for the most part they made their payments. They screwed up 1 month. 2 times, or if it went 2 times 30 or 1 times 60, you got a 3. Okay? And you went all the way down and they listed every credit thing that you had that was reported. The key thing here that I want you to see is that making your monthly payments was a good thing. Didn't care about your utilization, didn't care about your limit, didn't care about the number of cards, didn't care about length of nothing. What mattered is, did you make your payments on time? Back then, they figured when you applied for the credit card, if you said you had $35,000 annual income, they had a chart. And they would say, okay, he can handle, based on his income, he can handle $1,000 credit limit. And they didn't care how you got there, as long as you made your at least your minimum monthly payment, and as long as you stayed in those guidelines, you were good. Now, I said earlier that I had to file bankruptcy, and I did. It was just life happens. It wasn't poor management of credit. It was just life happens. So we filed bankruptcy. Now, bankruptcy today is far different than it was back then. First off, bankruptcy was a bad thing. That was a social stigma. You didn't tell anybody that you filed bankruptcy, and the only people that really knew, well, we had a local credit bureau here, and if you joined, which I did, they sent you a monthly book that listed all the public records, bankruptcy filings, births, deaths, what else was in there, who bought homes, what new businesses were opening up. I mean, it was all the public records they put into a book form, and they shipped it to you every month. So anybody that got that book, anytime you applied for credit, anytime you went in for a bank or a car loan, they all knew you had credit. And you were denied. If they had, and it would stay on your record, I think it was 7 years. Okay. In the first part, I think it was 10 years, and then Congress lowered it to 7 years, and I think it's 5 years now. But anyway, it doesn't matter. The length of time that it was on your record, you didn't get credit. I mean, you did not get credit. If you filed bankruptcy and didn't have a home, you weren't going to buy a home for 7 years. That just wasn't going to happen. And then starting in the 7th year, now you had to rebuild your credit the same way you did when you were coming out of school. So at around this time, they came up with the secured credit card. And I did this. You put $500 in the bank, they guarantee you a $500 credit limit, and if you play by the rules for a year or two, then they give you a unsecured $500 credit limit, and they let you have your money back. That is still 7 or 8 years after you file bankruptcy before you get any credit at all. Now, and in that 7-year period, I never got any junk mail. At the 7th year, when the credit companies found out that I was about to be ready to get more credit, I got flooded with credit card applications. And I made the mistake everybody else did. Oh, looky, I finally get a credit card. I'm credit worthy. And I filled out the application, and they sent me a card. And you know that sheet they give you that gives you all the rules and interest and stuff? Well, first off, they didn't send it back then. They just sent you the card, and your first statement had an annual fee on it. Okay? So when I found out there was an annual fee, I paid it the first year just because I was so happy to have a credit card. But I vowed at that point that I was going to spend the next year finding an unsecured credit card with no annual fee. I wasn't going to do that. I did. I ripped the card in half and sent it back to the company and said, I'm not paying your stupid fees. When I was rebuilding my credit, and I did finally, and it was like year 9, I believe, before I got my first unsecured credit card. And the first one I got was the Discover IT. The first one that I kept. The other one that I didn't keep, I think it was a Capital One. I won't swear to that. And I still have my Discover IT card. They did me right. They gave me like a $7,000 credit limit. Their customer service was always excellent. I really liked Discover IT, and I almost didn't apply for that card because at the time that was a business that Sears had set up. They were affiliated with Sears, and I hate Sears. Hated Sears then, still do today. Laughed all the way to their demise. But I decided that the 1% cash back and the fact that I was surviving and building my credit back was good enough reason to get the IT. And I'm glad I did. It was a great thing, and I've still got it. But I was still in the mindset that credit was bad. But here was a credit card that I had found that not only did they give me a nice limit, but they trusted me with it and cash back. But I still thought credit was bad. You don't need credit. You need one, like I said, you need two credit cards. One's for emergency, which I still have, and one to spend, which is the Discover, and a store credit card. Now, I did not go get a store credit card because at that time I had heard that would pull down your score. So if you've got a Visa, you don't really need a store credit card. So the whole concept of credit is completely different today. I mean, credit is not seen as a bad thing. Credit is seen as something to get, to obtain, to utilize, to use, to manipulate, to get things. That's how credit is seen today. It's a game. I mean, I watch, and I'm going to play the game, by the way, and we're going to follow it as I go. My credit is fine. I've got a mid 700 credit score. My goal is going to be to get to 800. That's going to be my game and how I get there. But back in the day, there was no incentives for you to get a credit card. I mean, today, if they're not going to give me something, I don't want your card, and I don't care what it is. You know, I want points, I want cash back, I want incentives up front, but I want something. And I want a nice credit limit. I'm getting ready to, the second credit card I got for emergencies after my bankruptcy was a bank, or actually a credit union credit card, which, by the way, I highly recommend those, especially if you have an account there. I mean, that credit card I'm paying 5% interest on, but it's only got a $3,000 limit. So I'm going to ask for a credit increase. Now in my mind, I'm going to tell you a quick story and then we're going to be done. I had applied about 2 weeks ago for the City Blue double cash back because I was getting 1.5 with Wells Fargo, but if I could get 2 with the City Blue, let's do it. So I applied. I got it. Got a nice credit limit. And then I came across the American Express, and I don't remember which one. Blue, I think. Anyway, at grocery stores you get 6% cash back, and it's got an annual fee. But I sat down and did the math. Much better deal. And I thought, okay, well, I'll just keep the City Blue for 6 months and then I'll reapply. That was my old thinking. So I was sitting down at my computer one day and I thought, what the heck? I mean, what's the worst thing that's going to happen? They're going to tell me no. So less than a week after I had done that, I applied for the American Express. And I got it. And in both of those cards, by the way, I got online, and both of them I got instant replies, and both of them I got nice credit limits. Now, the reason I'm going to ask for the credit limit raise on my credit union credit card is, again, here was the thinking. Before I could afford to buy the new cars that I bought junkers, and I always had It was always in the garage for about 5 or 6 years. Every car that I had was in the garage, so I was charging on this card. So I would go right up to the limit, and then I'd have to figure something else out. And I was making my monthly payments, and I was getting it down, you know. And so when I would come into some cash, I put it in the bank. So I'm watching these videos online, and they're saying utilization is more important. And so I did the math. I thought, well, my utilization is fine. And then I heard one of them say, it's card specific. Okay. So if I've got 3,000 credit limit, and I currently have 1,500 charged on it, in my mind I was thinking old school, I'm making my payments every month, so my credit is fine. Well, using 50% credit utilization and it's card specific, I'm surprised I have a mid 700, because the recommended is between 1 to 10%. So the most I should have on that's 300 bucks. So I'm going to start lopping that off pretty quickly, but the flip side of that is I'd like for them to double that credit limit. So we'll see what happens. And I'm going to wave a carrot in front of them, because my car is financed through Toyota. I asked the credit union to send me an application to see if they can beat the interest rate from Toyota. So if I send them my car loan, hopefully they'll respond in kind and raise the credit limit on my credit card. Well, that's about all I wanted to talk about. I wanted to start, because I'm going to be talking about credit over time. I think right now, as far as my credit is concerned, I'm just on a hold pattern. I mean, I know some guys would be really aggressive, but I'm not. 6% back on my groceries, 2% back on everything else, 4% back on gas. I'm good. So I'm just going to be in hold. I'm going to continue to learn and to study, and I'm going to pay down that one card. But as we continue to go forward, I wanted to get a good base so that you could see how credit has changed over the years. So this video, the title, I really am a dinosaur when it comes to credit. And I still think like that. I still have to remind myself. When I applied for that American Express sitting at the computer the other day, I was so scared they were going to tell me no. And because it was too soon, in my mind it was too soon. And I was thinking, well, they're going to wonder why I need another credit card. I just got one. Why does he need another one? And he's got 3 other ones. So why does he need ours? Well, see, old school. But anyway, I wanted you to have a base of how credit used to be. So now as we go forward, when I start talking about other things, you'll know from how far I came to where I'm at. The fact that I'm even playing the game from where I came from and playing it right as far as I can tell, is just amazing to me. So I'm going to continue the journey. I'm going to share the journey with you. And we'll see. Remember the goal, 800. Our goal is 800. Now how long it's going to take, I don't know. But we'll see. That's the goal, 800. And that's the history of where I came from credit bureaus. So we'll see you on the next video, and you guys, happy vending.